What's up, everybody? We are live. It is a Sunday night. We are back here. And thank you guys for watching and listening to Landscaping to the Point podcast. If you don't know where we're at, we're all over the place. We're on live on YouTube. We're on live on Instagram. We're on every channel and any channel that you can think of, except for your local news. So we'll be there soon. So, hey, what's up, guys? It's been a great week this week. I don't know about you guys. We've had some really tough things going at the shop, and during the week we had some snow. It's been a fun week. I don't know about you guys. How's it been going for you guys, Josh and JC?
It's been cold, man.
Cold.
Really cold. Yep.
We had real cold. I mean, we had negative. I want to say it was negative 25 the one day.
Yeah. How much snow did you get recently?
About the same thing.
How much snow did you end up getting?
We got a half an inch. Half an inch. What about you guys? I heard you got snow last week, so
yeah,
we didn't get nothing last week.
Man, it
was this week we got a half an inch on Thursday, the day after all this cold weather came out of our area. So, what did you get, Josh? Did you get an inch?
Widespread 4 to 6.
Wow. Yeah. Wow, that's a lot, dude. You guys were really cold beforehand too?
Yeah, I mean, we were in I was surprised it was going to be able to snow, but yeah, I mean, I think the day it came through, it was like 25. Before that, it was pretty. The cold front had come down, I think like a day or two before. So that was kind of the worry. But we got screwed, man. It was messed up. So we canceled the podcast because I had to go out and scrape. It was anticipated to start at like 5 to 7. It started at 8. It was done by 3. So with the forecast of like another little cell coming down, it was only supposed to bring up like a half an inch. So we figured, all right, we scraped everything clean in all of our sites throughout the eastern part of Massachusetts. Everything was clean and ready to go by 3:30 in the morning. Right. That second cell comes down, drops another inch and a half to 2 inches widespread all over our site. So guys are scrambling to get it up because at this point the that cold air was already in. So when it fell, it was hitting the ground like ice because we were waiting to salt it. We had salted during the storm to try to keep it back down, the freeze over from being packed down. And man, yeah, it was a bitch. It was a scramble for like 2-3 hours to get things like dry and safe for when places open. So it kind of screwed us because that finished I think at like 6:30 in the morning, that little salt finish. So it was running through and fucking hitting everything with salt real heavy.
Wow.
Yeah, it was a crappy snowstorm.
Yeah. That sucked, dude.
And it was, what was random about it, man, because we were kind of hyping ourselves because we're like, you know what, it's perfect. It happens overnight on a Sunday into a Monday from 8 to 3. Martin Luther King Day was that Monday. So, there's not going to be a lot of foot traffic. Man, when I tell you the amount of fucking cunty people on a fucking 6 o'clock at fucking Monday morning on a holiday, I was so shocked with you. And everybody was miserable because it was somebody bitching at somebody. And it was like, what the fuck, man? I actually ended up because I had a lot of dudes that didn't follow their SOP. I ended up out till probably late Tuesday night. Something like that. I think by the time, it might have been Wednesday. By the time I finished, I had roughly about 42 hours on the clock for a couple of days or something like that. Yeah, it was a long fucking stretch.
It's funny you say that everybody was in a bitchy mood, and I have the same sentiment too. I think I was in a bitchy mood that morning too. I woke up like at 3:30 because I had to go to work like super early, and then I didn't want to use my snowblower because I didn't want to wake up my neighbors. My neighbors are kind of older, so I got out at 3:30 in the morning with a shovel and just started shoveling out my driveway so I could be able to get to work. By the time I got to work, I was just like, I was already done. Mentally, I was already done. I'm like, fuck this. This sucks.
Yeah, I bet, dude. That's one of those things. It's like it kind of sucks when it comes down as a first round and then comes back as a second round,
Yep.
especially like that. Like it's like you're getting it all cleaned off and you're all ready to go done, and then you got to go back out and go around, and that's the sucky part of
Dude,
having.
to this day, this was a week ago. To this day, I still haven't finished doing my driveway. I just did enough to get my car in and out.
There's a lot of people that just say, because you're like, oh, it'll melt off. It ain't melting off till next week.
Yeah.
Right. Well, maybe you guys will get some warmer temperatures. We've had sun the last couple of days, so literally what we got this week and what we got beforehand is all melted off, and we're supposed to be up in almost 40s this week. So maybe that 40s will come to you guys, and it'll just melt off before the end of the week. So that'd be a difference, to see some ground. So
they're warming up. They went above freezing today for the first time in a while, but then we got maybe like another possible 1 to 3 on Wednesday, and then we got a couple clippers that making this week, and then I think we warm up towards the end of the week, and then we're back into a Arctic blast.
Jeez, man, I think that's one of the things, especially in our business, doing snow removal when you get that Arctic blast. You don't want to be out there because it's so freaking cold, but then it's money. Like you got to do out there. You got to get out there and do that job that you've already contracted to do. So it's like you're like, crap. What am I going to do? We got to go out there and do it. So I'm going to go do it.
I felt bad for for all my shovelers everywhere. They we all had pre-meetings saying, if everything's done good and we stay on top of this, we'll be leaving sites at 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning. So everybody, and everybody killed it on the first fucking round. But again, we just weren't anticipating as aggressive as it came down, and to come down almost like an ice as soon as it hit. And man, I tell you, I had shovelers from every site calling me, asking me at 6 o'clock in the morning, can we take breaks? The guys on my site, which were the Local 7 guys, iron workers, shout out to them. They killed it. Local 7 out of Boston. And yeah, I mean, you feel bad because it's like they've been out there all night. It was between 20, 25 degrees. The wind was out. It's fucking snowing ridiculous. And then like you got to turn around and say, hey, that 4 o'clock, in time. Nah, dude, you got like another 3 to 4 hours, and these guys are shivering. They're running out of gas. And it's easy to say from your truck when it's like just hang in there 3 more hours and you're fucking done. But at the end of the day, they stuck it out. There were some callbacks and some service calls to do for a day or two after. But yeah, I mean, I felt bad for the shovelers. That's a shitty time when you think you're going to be done and going home at a certain time.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Was it light and fluffy to where you could use backpacks, or no? You just had to.
No, that's the bullshit. So they forecasted that it was going to be fucking light and fluffy, and it was fucking concrete. They said the whole week 10 to 12 inches light to fluffy snow, and then we didn't really buy into the hype, and then we were bagging on the 4 to 8 widespread, but with a little bit of fluff factor. Nah, dude, this was concrete. Yeah, we had 2 loaders go down. We had a truck blow a brake line. We had a bunch of repairs. It cost me a lot of money this storm, which should have been an easy fucking home run, and it costed me a few $1,000s.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah, it's been we had one of our trucks go down Friday, actually, right after that. We did that half inch. Battery died out on it, and then we jumped it and we blew one of the head bolts that holds the thermostat on. So it literally leaked coolant all in the engine block. So now it sounds like shit and doesn't want to run. So that's going to be a fun project to fixing that stuff. Yeah. I think that's one of the bad things about, we always go through these issues on repairs and stuff. And I don't think you can ever be prepared for any type of repair in the middle of a snowstorm or a cold snap like this. It's kind of one of those things you have to deal with it when it comes in. Is that right, Josh? Is that how you kind of deal with it too?
Shit's gonna break, yeah. I mean, we had a Jensenite, McGrath Highway in Cambridge and Somerville. We kind of a main artery through Somerville, Cambridge, and Boston. And I had my loader driver who was going out to McGrath Highway, Route 28 to turn around, and we lost electrical charge. as he was turning around on that fucking highway. So he's in the middle of the middle of the northbound lane, the southbound lane. He calls me up, and I'm running over there. I can't pull him because he's at a full turn, and it dies out. So we indicate that it's not charge him. We get off a jump as soon as we go to put it in. It doesn't have enough juice to go into drive, so it locks. So we have to fucking put jumper cables on one of the trucks and kind of nurse it into the parking lot with the jumper cables. Man, it's fucking nightmare. Right. And I'm a little annoyed because we had a mechanic on duty that night that was kind of circling all our sites, and nothing that he could do that night, but he squared it up. I went to go move it today, and it's still not charging. So that was kind of pissed. But yeah, to answer the question, you can prepare all you want, but stuff's going to break. The other machine was they were getting ready to finish up a site up on the North Shore, and out of that site, they actually service 7 other sites, and then probably in addition to that, another 5 sites for just salt. So they were getting ready to load up the salters, and one of the calipers in the mini loader falls out. Blows hydraulic fluid everywhere. They have nowhere to load salt, so they're getting ready to try to either go to a middleman or whatnot. I'm calling every other fucking contractor I know in that area. They're all chasing the tails because they had left their site, salted them, and then had to go back because you got this additional 2 inches you got to clean up. So they're scrambling. There's no one there to give us a hand of, running the machine down and help us load. So, it all worked itself up. The mechanic went up, was able to cut the line, plug the line, go to Walmart and get some hydraulic fluid and get the machine up and running. So,
that's always
but yeah, it's all how you're going to react to it. Like shit like that would have, it would have drove me absolutely mad. Even 3-4 years ago, like I would have been having a fucking panic attack. But that's when you kind of just have to, like, off the bat, just bust out the Rolodex and start making phone calls to your network and see who can help you and what you can do. I mean, I always tell my main guys that have been with me that we've done more with less, compared to what we have now, so we can figure it out if something goes wrong. We've done a lot more with a lot less.
Right. I mean, it's always good to have a good network of, friends that are in the business, or, like you said, having a mechanic on duty to where you can be able to get back into getting the stuff done, because I know from years ago when I first started, nobody wanted to help anybody. So it was like, if something went down and you broke it down, dude, you're finding a shovel and a car and getting to that job. But when doing commercial lots, it sucks, dude, if you don't have a plow and or a loader or something to get into it. And so it's good to have a good network nowadays to where we can call everybody and say, hey, I need to get this lot done. Can you do this lot while you're over this way? I know you're over this way, or can you swing over there for me real quick? So that's always good, Josh, that you got that too. So our topic today is C.O.D, and it's not Call of Duty, guys. I don't know if that's what everybody thinks it is, but it's not Call of Duty. It's collect on demand. And it's not about getting the mafia out there like Josh does to just bust some kneecaps to get his cash that he needs for all the people that owe him, millions of dollars. I mean, shit, he does millions of dollars nonstop, but it's one of those things. So I want to know, besides the mob that you got, Josh, what's a good way to go out and collect that money, dude?
He's a made man.
That's why my wall's not done behind me. I need the fucking money. I need someone to pay me.
It sucks, doesn't it? I mean, I think winter is one of those things that, we have contracts that are like 30, 60 days. Some companies I know have stuff for 90 days, after work's getting done. And, at the beginning of winter, you're like, okay, well, I need to get this shit done. You got repairs, you got salt, you got all kinds of stuff going on. And, like Josh is doing, he's, replacing his whole basement. We're all doing stuff in our own houses because during the summer, we ain't got time to do that shit, so we're out there right now trying to do everything. I just did a fireplace in my house and a wall and just redid my bedroom. There's a lot going on at our own homes at this time of year. So, money's always an issue, and chasing people down is always fun. You got any tips, Josh or JC, on what you can do to collect that money, especially like right now?
I can tell you what not to do. Don't sleep on your invoices.
Hey, we'll take it.
Yeah, one of the biggest things is like people seem to get. I feel like this mentality amongst like tradesmen in general, where when you know on the books, you got a lot of cash flow running in, right? You go, okay, for the month I'm booked out, I got like 100 grand coming in this month. Fictitious numbers for anybody, right?
Right.
You're sitting there, you may be a little bit more lenient with yourself about billing. You can't do that. You gotta get right on those invoices and get them right out. Make sure they're descriptive, of what you did, what your expectation to be paid, as well as when you write the quote, your expectations of when you're being paid, your terms and conditions. If you're not paid, yada yada. Some people will try to get a credit card on file. That might work in some of like the inside trades. The lawnmower and the snow's a little different on the commercial side. You can't do that. For us, it sucks. We have to make sure that these property management companies are paying us, on the T, whether it's 30 or 60. Because, like, for instance, the storm like we just had, we went over the budget for what we would use for a storm of that size because of that second run. We did have some calls. We have a guy on call, 48 hours after the storm that will go out and take care of any service calls. But like the repairs alone probably going to cost around 10 grand on everything,
Right.
And,
Right.
That's a hit. That's something we have to absorb on top of, keeping payroll. I got some guys on salary. I got a lot of guys that are hourly. I'm trying to do a little bit less in the field myself this year when it's not a storm and sending guys out. So I have to absorb that. So I do have to make sure that I'm on top of it. No, I'm not going to say that I'm great with that because I have slacked on writing a few bills. After I get off the podcast, I got to write one up for, 12 somethings we did for a property in that last storm.
Right.
But I think it's getting those invoices out as soon as you can. I think it's taking a step back when you're done with the property, whether you use like a Jobber, an LMN, a Yard Book, or QuickBooks, just stop and write the bill and get it right out. And, on any of those, you can set the automatic reminder to follow up with the customer, 5 days, 10 days, 14 days later. And just try to stay on it, and obviously have, your estimates, make sure you get them signed. If you do have to go to small claims court, as much documentation and the paper trail as you had, at least that there wasn't an agreement, try not to do, I get it. It's hard sometimes. You meet a cool client that you kind of vibe with and, it's a handshake. Those are usually the ones that fucking smack you in the face,
Right. Right.
I still got a company that owes me 30 grand from last year that I'm still trying to set up on payment arrangements. I'm giving them an opportunity because it was a B2B, a business to business arrangement we had. And, he kind of got taken for a ride by a large property management company, local, that owed them quite a bit of money. And, that's where my money was. So I'm understanding of that, but I'm kind of losing my fucking patience with it, where the kneecaps I could take him to court and it was on that press, but I'm kind of at the point now where I've given several attempts for him to make, the attempt to make a payment or a down payment. And I'm talking minimal payments. And I'm starting to get a little fucking offended now, to be honest with you. So it's beyond just business where it's beginning to be a little personal. Or it's like, stop making fucking commitments if you can. I would rather you tell me, hey, I'm not going to pay you. And you know what? I'm going to take you to court. So when you do file fucking bankruptcy, I can at least get my 10% out of that, like something.
Right. Well, that's a good thing. I mean, talking about that, literally, I was just talking to a buddy of mine that they're a supply company, and they have a guy that's literally, I think he said it was like $25,000 that they owe him. They owe the supply company, and literally they've been hounding him left and right to make a payment. And he said, what's really funny is, like, he called him last week and said, hey, I just seen you just came back from Africa. How was your trip in Africa? And the guy was like, well, I was there 2 months and I did a couple hunts. And he's like, so are you going to make a payment today? Like, we want to get some of that money to, so that way we get you back in the schedule and, get you back supplies and stuff. And he's like, no, I ain't got no money. And he's like, dude, he probably spent like 40 grand in Africa with all these hunts, all the 2 months just that he stayed in Africa, but he can't pay his supply bill, not even make a payment on it and say, here's, $1,000, here's $4,000, but he goes to Africa, and the dude's like, it's pretty funny, that when it comes back to, once we get back into the spring season, he's going to be like, hey, I need to get some more, materials for the year, some fertilizer, some irrigation stuff. And he's going to be like, dude, I can't float you no more. Like, you pushed it way beyond. And it gets hard, for us as owners to go after people and say, hey, but like Josh says, if you got it in writing, you get them their signatures. That way you can go after them in court if you have to. It's always one of the things that you really don't want to, because it's going to cost us a lot of money to go after them in court. But if that's what we have to do, that's what we have to do.
Let me ask you this question. So when it comes to that and like writing up the contracts and basically getting your ducks in order, do you have to treat every customer as if you are going to take them to court?
I think that you would systemize your process as far as like getting the contracts together and have everybody sign the same fucking piece of paper, regardless if it's, hey Jensen, I know we're boys and all, but your building, is running, $100,000, no contract for the year. I need you to sign this. It's business is business. I think you have to. And I think, listen, those are mistakes I've made in the past where, I've done business with friends of friends or guys I know in the area and I've been burnt. Last year I made a couple of bad decisions on letting people come on board as far as clients and, purchase some additional equipment that put me in a hole about $175,000. And, I'm still digging out of that hole right now. It's not killing me, but it did kill me throughout the year. And I think moving forward, I'm like that way, regardless of who you are. My company is my company. It's not just me. If I die tomorrow, my wife and my foreman still have to run that company to make things work. So I'm trying to set that up now. Whereas, if from the $50 lawnmower to the fucking $1.5 million snow account, obviously that snow account's going to be a little bit more intricate and detailed in the contract. But you're all signing something. There's no more, hey, we'll come by fucking Miss Sue and cut your lawn. But yeah, you attack it where, in the possibility that someone doesn't pay you, you have a leg to stand on. Well, obviously, no one wants to go to fucking court, because even if you go to court and you win, they still have to pay you. You still have to chase the fucking money down. It's not a guarantee that you're going to get paid. You can call constables out and have them arrested and have bench warrants put out, but that costs money too every time you go. And if you're not getting, your $1,000 a day, sometimes it's not worth it. But, that's why, I know a lot of guys tend to do the credit card on file for residential, and when it doesn't work, that's it. Your service is canceled. See you later. But yeah, I think you approach it. I hate to say it, but you approach it like everybody's the bad guy, so you protect yourself in the long run.
Yeah, I agree with you on that, Josh. I mean, I totally agree with you on that. Yeah, like you said, it's easier to have it, credit card on file. I know that's what I approach every customer with. I think that's one of the things that we've changed in our system. Even with commercial, we approach with them like, hey, we'd like to have a credit card on file, to where we can bill it right then and there once we're done with the job. And I have a couple that are on credit card on file, which is good for business. But then I have a couple like Josh that, you're waiting. I have one that I wait on 30 days before I even get a check to me, so it's one of those things. You're sitting there waiting for that check to get from them. And you're like, you got money out for expenses for salt and gas and repairs. And your guys that are out there, and you're just like, okay, like, how long am I going to have to wait for this? And you can't ever get everybody on the same thing. But I think, like Josh is saying, if you have that contract right and you approach everybody the same way, and make sure that you're trying to get your money, that I think that's going to be the best thing altogether too. So,
and then obviously too, like when you get into like, deep residential, like heavy residential work or commercial work, like obviously having like your own terms and conditions with like vendors or a credit card that's solely just used for the business. Like, I've worked up where like I have a circle of people, vendors that I use, that give me credit. You know what I mean? It's not conventional credit, but it's like, hey, we'll give you 30, 60, 90 days to pay the bill. We know how it is. I got a salt guy I use right now. I got a couple of salt vendors that they know the situations of sometimes we don't get paid, and they give us 60 days, and they're a bit more expensive. They're probably about $20 more expensive a yard than their competitors, but they're in my circle. I know if I need a load, then a little salt, they'll drop it off same day, next day. So, they have my business. And the same thing with like the mechanics and the parts places. It's the same thing. I'll pay the extra money just to know that like that opportunity, that connection's there.
Here's a question to you, Josh. So now, do you go back and forth, let's say, during the winter, do you go back and forth with those vendors that you have the credit with and the vendors that you don't back and forth? So that way you cover your ass for, 60 days if something would happen?
What do you mean?
try
Like juggle them?
Like, yeah, juggle them. Like say one week you need 60 yards. So you're buying from one guy, and then the next week you're buying 60 yards from your creditor lender. Are you doing that?
I have. I try to stick to my salt people, but like my salt vendors, I try to give my main local guy more, my treated guy more than anything, because he's real good, and we've done other deals outside of salt and stuff. He helps me out a lot. He actually he has equipment on some of my sites as a subcontractor, so I try to feed that. But yeah, if I had to, but at the same time, like if we run into a bad month, where let's say we have like some really bad unforeseen costs come up, I can approach him and say, hey dude, like I can't give you like the full 10 grand for salt, but I can give you 5. Can you float me a couple more weeks? And he's understanding of that. Some of those companies don't give a fuck. They'll cut you off and see you later. And not to mention, like even like the Midwest and parts of the East Coast, we're seeing a salt shortage right now. I know that my guy got a stockpile to pull off in case there's a shortage. So like he's prepared for that. So like I try to stay as loyal as I can to my people. And obviously you do have to have like kind of a scapegoat just in case shit happens. They're not available, but listen, I've been in those circumstances where a check gets delayed or like accounts payable doesn't send something out. They forget to hit a button, and we're supposed to have 50 grand worth of payments come in. We got 30 grand worth of bills sitting out, and it's like shit, you can't pay it. It's like you pay what you can and you communicate with them. Look, I have a few bills from last winter that rolled over into this winter, that I needed time to catch up with, because I had a lot of costs that went to the landscape season, and we had a very, very slow start to the landscape season. We didn't pick up to the end of the season, so we're trying to be a little bit more. I'm going to say cheap. I'm trying to be a little bit more frugal with where we're spending the money. Like the guys know that we're really trying not to buy any more equipment this year. We threw money in some new machines and some new equipment. We threw a little bit more payroll this year, but we're trying to coast and kind of just tighten up the systems with what we have. Like the sites are tooled and somewhat over tooled where they're able to do the job done in an efficient manner. Without having to add a ton of, because we did have like a fucking shopping list of stuff we were going to do, and I kind of stepped back on it because there are some costs coming up in the spring that were going to occur that we're not going to take financing on. We're going to take that as like just a full payoff. So we want to be careful with what we spend.
Right. Yeah, I think it's easier if you kind of. I feel like every company's kind of goes lean during the winter to kind of just float on by, because of us. Especially us in the snow removal business, so because you don't want to have that too high of expense during the winter, especially when you're waiting on money to come in. And I think that's one of the main things on collecting, that you got to have that good process in hand to kind of get it to go in, so that way you can go through the winter too.
I got a question for both of you guys. I got a question for both of you guys. So, business related. Obviously, you guys do different services in the summertime, spring, and then in the wintertime. Do you treat your winter side of things as a separate business, and your summer and spring, summer, fall as another business, or do you treat it as one big business, like budget wise and stuff like that?
I treat it as one big business. I mean, it is part of the business. Every month has a different budget to it. And I would say every season kind of has like a different budget for us. So it's kind of different than like, the spring, where our budget's a little higher because of all the mulch and our materials that we have to buy to get going through the spring. So that's a little bit different a budget than say right now. The winter is, we don't have as much work that we usually do. We run 2 trucks, but we're only running, 26 jobs that we do on a snow removal event. So it's not like we're putting out like our normal where we're mowing 50 yards and we're doing, 200 landscape jobs throughout the years. It's a little different than that. So our budget's a little bit different and a little lower than our regular season. So Josh, what's your thoughts? What do you Josh is back there dying to death.
Please,
You know,
yeah,
he's got to sneeze it out.
Get that sneeze out there. At the end of the year, the P&L is the same. So the company makes our revenue is based off snow and landscape together. But as we sit at the table and we try to figure out what we're doing, it's treated as like two separate divisions. So it's like, snow from October till April 31st is, should be bringing this amount of revenue. It's going to cost this much. This is the budget we have for equipment, repairs, miscellaneous, blah, blah, blah. This is what it brings in. Like, I know for the past 5 years, we've done more revenue with snow than we have landscape. And we that's why we separate them a little bit more so we know what we have to play with. I've thought of separating them, but just, accounting wise, it's just easy to keep everything in the same ballpark.
I think.
Here's a good question on that. I know a couple other companies do it differently to where they separate it. Do you feel like separating it is better, or is it worse trying to separate the businesses and say this is just snow removal and this is just the regular season?
I think if I'm no business guy, but I think if I were to do it, I would treat it as like two separate businesses, and I don't know, like I don't know if I'd put that all together as one. Ultimately, at the end of the day, yeah, it's one business, but I would concentrate on the winter side of things as one entity, and so that my whole entire focus is on that during the winter time, and then transition from like the landscaping and mowing side of things. But I know it's kind of a weird question because at the end of the day, yeah, it is one business. But I think if I were to do it, I'd have separate budgets for the wintertime business and then separate for the spring.
Yeah. So my budgets are separate, but again, my umbrella, my revenue all falls under the same company. So granted, this like my legal name is Carbon Green Company Incorporated. That's it. There's no landscape. You might see the landscape construction, landscape snow plowing services on like, PPE or the trucks. But my legal name is Carbon Green Company Incorporated. So depending on how we want to flip that. But I do know guys that actually separate the tax ID numbers and their corporations are separate. The only thing that I'm probably going to do different this year, next year, is I'll probably start up a sales and leasing corporation. And that's more of like tax purposes for equipment.
I think I'd do it like Josh does it.
Yeah.
Huh?
I'd do it like you do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, we treat it because it's like, again, you're not like you buy a snow pusher. The snow pusher is not for the fucking year round, So it's literally just from that October 1st to that April 31st era. So it's like it's completely different. So like everything's pushed over to the side, like the systems and processes, like the way we pay, like the account we pay out of is different. It's just it's owned by the company, it's owned by the corporation, but the accounts are just different. The money for snow stays in the snow account, the money for land stays in the land and construction account.
Yeah, that makes sense to me.
Yeah, it really does. Well, we're gonna take a quick break, guys. I wanted to thank our sponsors, Cujo, for sponsoring the show. And I want to thank Pro Parts Direct for sponsoring the show. For if you need any parts, Josh loves them. He goes to Pro Parts Direct every day, and I know I love Cujo, so we know that. So, thanks everybody for watching. We are still going on here. The episode's still going, so just keep listening. But okay, so you're thinking about making a leasing company. How is that going to work, Josh? I mean, you're buying equipment and you're going to lease it out to your company by making a separate entity and a separate company.
Yes.
Is that better in the long run? You think
it's more of a tax strategy? Yeah. So like as most of you guys know, like when you buy a piece of equipment, or you pay a monthly note on that piece of equipment. You can't just write off that monthly payment. You can write off the interest and then you can depreciate that. Now, there are other tax strategies you can use with that. We can talk about that another time. The sole purpose of me doing it is that what I can do is if I have a sales and leasing company that can depreciate the purchase or even lease that equipment from, say, like Caterpillar, write that off. Then what I can do is I can do a long-term lease with a, $1 buyout on like a skid steer or front end loader to, my Carve and Green company, where now I can write off that entire lease or rental rather than depreciate it. So let's say, my company, my landscape company leases a skid steer from my leasing company, versus purchasing. So I'm making a $1,400 a month payment to Caterpillar to own this thing. I don't write off $1,400 per month. I can write off the interest that I paid that year and then depreciate it for, 3 to 5 years, depending on how your CPA does it. Whereas if I have my leasing company, no, we're not going to hit that yet. We're just going to stay on the landscape company side. Now, if my leasing company leases or rents, right? The keywords are lease or rent to the landscape company, that $1,400 per month, I can write off fully. This is why a lot of guys do like having the rental equipment that they borrow in the in the winter, is because when you do have a bad winter, you can write that fucking payment off. Whether, usually like a skid steer, you're somewhere like 10, 12 grand for like a 5 or 6 month commitment, or 4 or 5 month commitment on a skid, and somewhere around like 15 to 20 grand on a loader. And you can write that off fully. Some guys are like, I'd rather buy it. So for me, the strategy would be, buy it at least to the company and then sell, flip it, depreciate it, sell it while it still has equity in it. Still does carry equity when there's low hours, and then make that money back, buy a new one, throw it in. So it's more of a tax strategy than like a separate business venture.
Okay, so I got a question for you. Turf Brothers 4 says the Section 179 tax deduction allows small business to deduct the purchase price that first year. So do you think that is going to benefit the leasing company, or would that
it'll benefit the leasing company, but you can't do that on every single purchase you make. That's the common misconception there. Like, you're allowed up to a certain dollar amount depending on how you're structured, but that would go to the leasing company. And ideally it would be like, we want to write off as much as we can through the landscaping and snowplow company and kind of filter it down there. But it would be the same thing with the sanders, with the brine equipment, everything gets leased to that. But yeah, that was one of the tax strategies I said we say for another time, because that's the go-to for everybody. But you can't, again, you don't want a red flag with IRS. So if you're constantly hitting, they want to see some depreciation in there. They don't want to see that. They don't want to see you bought $500,000 worth of equipment, or $200,000 worth of equipment, and you're trying to 179 everything, and rather than depreciate. So
okay. Do you any questions, Turf Bros 4? I know you're listening to us, watching us on Instagram. Any other questions on that? I think it's going to be a good strategy. I mean, I'd like to see how it works, because if so, I mean, it definitely could work out for a lot of companies. Are you planning on? I know some companies around us lease the trucks too from a certain company. Would that be something that you would do too? Lease
everything.
The trucks.
Everything.
Okay.
Everything.
So literally, pretty much everything you would buy through the leasing rental company and rent it out to Curve and Green. Okay, I think that would work out real good then, because literally you got a lot more rent. As a Curve and Green, you're renting out a lot more, so you got a bigger tax write off too. So.
Yeah. I'm just trying to thin my liability, my tax liability. Right. And I mean, you see guys do them with like you'll see the haulers and the moving trucks and stuff, all usually a leasing company on the side of them. There's a reason for that.
Right.
Owned by Scott's Leasing, operated by JC's Trucking.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, there's a one company, they literally do one of our suppliers, that's all their trucks are. It says their company name on them, but underneath in very small print, like, it's this leasing company. You know what I'm saying? And it's like, who it is. That they're buying their materials under one company and selling the materials under a different company. The trucks are all under a different company. So that it's all ran differently. So but it works out. Works out in the long run. When it comes to businesses. So. Josh, how would you get more customers to, want to switch over to a better, collecting wise of your money? How would you get more of your business customers to switch over to like a 30-day or 15-day? Is it easier writing it in the contract saying that this is the only way we do it? I mean, I know some commercial accounts only want to pay every 30 days. So how do you work that out differently?
That's tough. I mean, I've honestly never really crossed that bridge. It's kind of just industry standard. Personally, the way that I try to set things up is, when they send out, if they send out like a counter contract, not a counter contract, but their own version of a contract with like payments, say that, 3 of my accounts pay on the 30th. The next 2 that sign on, I'm trying to get them to pay me on the 15th. And that might be my agreement. We'll say, we can delay, we can do a prorate pay at the end of the contract term. That way I constantly have cash flow. Because like what I used to do is, fuck it, everybody pay on the 30th. That's great.
Right.
When all your bills come out and your unexpected repairs and, you had snowstorms that just went crazy for the first 2 weeks and now you're broke and now you got to wait for the 30th. So at least this way, you got money kind of trickling in throughout the month rather than all at one shot. So that's worked for me. But I mean, honestly, if you're going down that road, it'll probably be communication where you say, hey, listen, we pay, if you pay early, like you say with the municipal beds, if they'll ask you early pay discount, how much, whether it's 2%, 5%. I'm not giving you a fucking discount to pay your bill on time. That's just kind of what it comes down to. That's on me to manage the money that comes in correctly. And I think that's having the due date set up where like, maybe you have, a small percentage pay on the 10th, another one pay on the, the 15th, another one on the 30th, and so on.
Are you doing late fees?
Absolutely. Whether or not they pay them is another fucking thing. A lot of the times they just fucking ignore them and write the amount for the next one, and you end up fucking throwing them off. But again, I would still write them up. Even at the end of the contract, if you decide not to charge them, that they're just automatic, or you put them in just to flex and say, hey, this is what I told you. In the event that they don't pay the bill, you can still collect late fees. And if you have interest, you can put a compounding interest on those late fees on top of the principal balance. So you kind of want to have all that. Like, I'll be honest with you, with most of the commercial places, I not many of them pay. I don't have many that haven't paid on time, but the ones that haven't in the past, they don't pay the late fees. The residentials, when we had them, they would pay them. But commercial, I mean, they'll tell you to kick rocks.
Yeah, I agree with you on that, Josh. I feel like a lot of our commercials are like that. We have a big national account that does for our landscaping, and it's like they know that the bill's due at within 20 days, but they'll wait till 35 days before they pay you. And it's like, but they're good for their money. They make sure you get paid. You're not hunting. You can be like, hey, I need to get paid, and they're like, okay, give us a couple more days, we'll get it to you. And but they pay pretty good. So I mean, they're not like somebody that's trying to gyp you out of $20. If you're like, okay, the job's going to cost you $500, they're like, okay, well then we'll pay you $1,000 for the job. And so you're like right away, like, okay, well you're paying a lot more than anybody else. So I guess I'll wait that extra 15 days to get paid. I'm not that kind of guy that's like, yeah, I could go ahead and give them, a late fee and say, hey, can you pay this? But like Josh said, they're not going to pay it. They're just going to be like, okay, here's your rest of your money on your regular bill, so.
Couple areas I messed up. You brought up national. I remember at the very beginning, I would write the invoice and, I would do the job. And at the, the end of the week, if I wasn't busy, the next week I'd write the bill. And then, I'm calling up, hey, you guys are late. You guys are a week late. You guys are 2 weeks late. You have to read the fine print because obviously when you're dealing with nationals, most of the time they're not signing your contract. You're signing theirs and maybe, countering with like, hey, the verbiage in the contract, can you rephrase it? Or can you put it in like layman's terms what that means? Or can you change the pricing? But a lot of the times how they write it is, 30 days or 60 days from the date of receipt. So the date of receipt isn't the day you finish the job. So me being me in the day when I didn't have any help, I'm taking on too much work that I could handle, but I couldn't handle the admin side. I'd get to billing it out a week and a half, 2 weeks later, thinking, okay, they already have it in the system. I submitted the fucking before and after photos, the work log, blah, 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 but they don't have the invoice. So their that countdown, that calendar doesn't start until you submit that invoice. And I know now that sounds like, common fucking sense, but when you're busy as fuck and, you might have, national here, regional here, your residentials, your local property managers, you tend to forget that like there's different systems for everybody. So that was one area where I did mix up. And I used to charge the fees and they'd call me back and say, dude, read the contract. It's 30 days from the date of invoice.
Right. It's once they receive it too, and that's one of the things like, I like ours is like you could do the job unless you send that invoice out that night. You're not getting paid for 35 days. And that's you better hurry up and get that invoice out to as soon as possible.
I'm not really comfortable going more than 45 days with anybody on
Right. Oh no.
unless it's a business to business like me to you or me to JC. Then I'm okay with it. But other than that, like anything over, like I've had some companies like SMS Assist out of Chicago was one that used to do 60 to 90, and I'm like, I got to do all this fucking work and pretty much wait almost the entire season to get paid for the fall cleanup. So which means I got to foot the bill. I got to do it at a lower price. Let's not bullshit anybody. When you're working with nationals, you're usually doing it at a 35% to 25 to 35% discount. And now you're footing the bill for them. A lot of those places, they're essentially like just fucking money brokers as well as business brokers. But that's how they make their money. They're floating. You're their credit card. So I don't really get comfortable. I'm not comfortable doing more than 45-day terms with people.
Right. So Turf Brothers asked, do I believe in late fees? Yes, I do believe in late fees. We have it set up in our system, in our CRM, to where we give late fees if any customers pass 20 days. And I know that's one of the sucky things is that, I feel like you have to have that. And we tell our customers it's a 15% late fee if you're past 20 days. Granted, 90% of our customers are credit card on file. We charge them after 30 days. But that other percentage that we're waiting on that thing, if you're past 20 days, yeah, you're going to get a late fee. And I believe that any company that is ran landscaping, anything, you should be having that late fee on there. You should be charging a late fee. And, Josh would agree with me. JC would agree with me that you got to have a late fee. If you're not having a late fee, what's the point? But you have to have a certain point to where you stop and say, we have a certain point that, once it gets to 2 months, if you ain't paid, we're stopping all services. And I think a lot of companies should have that too, because I see some companies that will go all year and they won't charge the late fees, or they will charge the late fees and they'll still continue service. Josh, go ahead.
So have you guys ever noticed most credit card companies, especially the bad ones, are based out of like Delaware or Washington, right? Like when you get the address to Delaware. And the reason why is like in those areas, they don't have a limit or a statute on what you can charge for interest on a credit card, right? So a mistake I made in the day is I'm thinking, all right, if a fucking bad credit card is going to charge me 30% and a mowing customer who owes me $2,000 isn't paying, I'm going to charge you 30% plus my fucking, my admin fees to call you, email you. Made a phone call to Attorney General on something else and kind of got in a conversation with the guy that answered the phone. And come to find out, at least in Massachusetts, but I would assume, Massachusetts is comparable, like, California, New York, and some other states. You can only charge up to about 18% interest in Massachusetts. Otherwise, it's unlawful. You lose your case. Where you would make the difference is that you would have administration fees. So essentially, if every week or every 3 days you're reaching out to this customer, or you have someone calling, or your CRM is doing automatic updates, you charge the $5 or $10 processing fee to process that alert. Because someone's going to do it. You're paying someone to do it. If you have, maybe you have like a AI or India call station calling for you, you're still paying that person. But that's compounding on the principal. So that money gets added onto the principal balance, which can, that 18% goes up again. So you're adding to the principal, which puts the entire balance with the 18% higher. But like, I'm going there saying, fuck you. I'm charging you $100 a month plus fucking 30%, blah, blah, blah. No, I can only charge for the whole year, the 18. So I think the way it worked out, we were like, it might be 22% because I think I was like a 1.5 or 1.8% per month. But then the processing fees were somewhere around $50. So if every other week we have to reach out to you, it's $100 a month. So now you're adding $1,200 a year. Now you also get to add the $1,200 to that principal balance plus that 18 to 22% interest you're charging. That's where it starts compounding and you're making money off the LA fees. Listen, I know guys that just cut grass and they literally make tens of thousands of dollars off the interest for people not paying. They want, like he wants like 20 to 30% of his customers to constantly be late so he can charge those points.
Wow. I mean, yeah. Turp Brothers has a question for you. What do you and does it make you feel when you do an install and a customer pays you half up front but finishes their money issue? There's a money issue when you finish the job.
Oh,
How do you feel?
what's
I
their
know
issue?
that's happened to me before.
Infuriating. Yeah, but again, yeah, it's that's a you problem to them. But at the end of the
Right.
day, if they can't pay the bill, they can't pay the bill. This is kind of a debate of like how guys get paid, where people are like, a third, 50-50, all at the end. I used to do the all at the end, and I've gotten burned on jobs. I feel more comfortable doing 50% up, 50% down. That way, at least if I get burned, I still get away with 50% of it. And then, obviously, like we just talked before, you'd have to make sure that, all your agreements and your signatures are in good standing, and, you take it to court, or you could, work something out with the client. This is where you could capitalize on, added interest and points, and basically say, hey, look, I shop the banks, the best rate you're going to get on a, commercial construction loan is, 12%, and, this is all and basically just copy what you see off the banks and set them up on a payment agreement. A lot of the times they're just trying to screw you out of money, and that's when, email late notice, certify a letter, second certified final notice, and you go to court and you get it that way.
Right. I think it's one of those things that's hard. And it's always one of those things I feel like we've tried it in the last couple of years, is that we have a finance company that will finance stuff that's over a certain amount. So that way you can always send that out. So that way, that finance company can go after them as much as they want. But I think you have to have, like Josh said, the right wording and everything in agreement to where it's all signed off, so that if there is a problem, you can go after them no matter who they are or what kind of business they are or whatever. So, yeah, I think having the right processes and the right writing, the better it is.
So I want to make an announcement right now to everybody that's listening on the podcast. If you are having problems with collecting money from clients, we would like to announce that myself, Scott, and Josh have now formed a new business, and we will we will collect the money for you. Be a little bit of a old school strong arm in action, and we'll get the job done is our motto.
Yeah, we'll make sure we can collect the money for you if you need to. Just let us know. My cousin Vinny will be doing all the work around town, so don't worry. Okay.
What do we charge? We charge what, 30%?
I thought it was like 45% because we got to split it, 3 ways. So 45% of the total amount, we take half up front right away too once we collect.
Yeah, we'll get you at least 55% back of your money.
Heck yeah, we'll make sure. Her brother says DM me. He's really needing some help. I understand you, Turf Brothers, man. It's one of those things. There's always people that always try to take that shit and money from you and not want to pay you sometimes. And I've been there. I think all three of us have been there in business, and there's a lot more out there in business that have been in the same way you have, and it's not.
Here's a good one for Turbo Turf or whatever his name is. If
Turf
you are
Brothers.
making Turf Brothers, if you are making repeated attempts to collect from a customer, let's say especially residential, and they're not answering your phone calls, and they're not, maybe they're dodging the certified letters, chances are, they're not going to respond to a summons. So here's the best part. So when you do finally take them to small claims court, so typically, you want to call your county's clerk's office to see what the protocol is, but typically it's, paper trail of, invoice sent, past due notice, final notice, certified letter, final certified letter, and then you go to the county courthouse or the city courthouse, and you file with the clerk. Chances are they're not going to show up for court. If they don't show up for court, this is when you can put a lien on that property. You can put a mechanics lien on that property. So if you did something to improve that property that's part of the structure, like it can't be beds or anything like that, but you can go after the sole amount. I think if it's over like $2,000, You put a lien on that property. They can't do anything. They can't refinance that home. They can't sell that home until they pay you. Now, granted, again, this is why it goes back to when you first write up that motherfucking contract. If you write it up that it has interest, right? Let's say that they say, you know what? I got one of those fucking 2% loans back in 2020. I don't have to refinance my house ever. And they don't pay you for fucking 10 years, you still have that 18% per year growing on that compound. Remember, every year that interest becomes principal. That principal gets interest applied to it. So at some point, you could make out a cash cow on that. You just have to be patient. But you have to kind of just follow that, like have the system in place where, you make a couple phone calls. Maybe you have a way where you can go to court. You can show, hey, text message, phone call. These are all courtesy things because you listen. I collect by sending you a fucking email through Job at LMN or QuickBooks. You can see when they see it. You print that out. You bring it to court. You gotta win.
Yeah.
That's kind of just to do it. Or hire a collector. Collectors usually charge 20%. 20% is what they collect. Or you sell it out. You're not getting much, but they goes on their credit.
Yep. That's the best way to do it. Send it to collections. Let them take care of it and collect something out of it.
The lien on the house is like, think of it this way. If you got someone that ends up fucking dying in the meantime and it goes into an estate, they can't do anything until you pay that bill. And I mean, if you have compounded, essentially, if that goes into a state and no one owns it, you end up owning a fucking piece of property,
Right. I think it's good in the end. Well, guys, we are at the end of the show today. So hopefully we answered all your stuff, Turf Brothers. If not, we'll DM you and we'll see if we can help you out with whatever you can. We know some good people, I can make a little stop in with, some big heavy hammers and sledges, and Josh will just show up with a bulldozer and run their property over for you. But, that's how we work it around here. Well, thanks everybody for listening and watching us. Have a good day. Have a good week. And let's continue to knock it out of the park. Thank you, Cujo. Check out the link below to save some cash. And go over to Pro Parts Direct if you need any parts. It's always fun. But that's all we got for today. I want to thank everybody. Thanks, Josh. And thanks, JC, for the good stuff. And thanks. And continue to watch us, like us.